Are you ready?
Let's go.
From AMI Central.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run.
This is as good as it gets.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson, and this week I'm alongside Josh Watson and Claire Buchanan. Let's jump right into it and get into our headlines for this week.
Neutral Zone headlines.
Big news coming out of wheelchair curling this week. The Wheelchair Curling Championships are taking place in Richmond, BC from March 4th to 12th, along with Canada. The other participating nations will be China, Czech Republic, Denmark, Italy, Japan, Korea, Latvia, Norway, Scotland, Sweden, and the United States. The World Curling Federation will provide coverage of select games during the championships. For more information, please go to worldcurling.org/2023/world-wheelchair-broadcast-schedule. We'll have that link in the show notes if you didn't catch it here.
Our congratulations goes out to one of our very own panelists, and that is Claire Buchanan, as she makes the 2023 Canadian Women's National Team for Para Ice Hockey. She has done that 9 consecutive seasons, and I gotta be honest with you and say that making a national team once is difficult. Making it twice is even more difficult. Making it 9 times is really, really challenging. So congratulations, Claire, and to the rest of the team for making it, and I know you guys will represent Canada very, very well.
Thank you very much, Brock. Former curling champion Lisa Weigel, who had gone on to win multiple Scotties, has been nominated chef de mission for the 2024 Youth Olympic Games, which will be held in South Korea.
Those are your headlines for this week. Let's check in on our Twitter poll question from last week. We asked you, how do you think the Toronto Blue Jays will fare this season? 0% of you said be mediocre, thank goodness. 80% of you said make the playoffs, and 20% of you were rather positive and said win it all. We're not going to give you a Twitter poll question for this week, as we're going to try something a little bit different moving forward. And where I want to go with this for the next couple of minutes is going back to Claire making the national team for 9 consecutive seasons. Can you chat just briefly what it's been like to make this team not once but 9 times?
It's incredible what has happened over 9 years. I came into the program and it already being a few years old already. I do feel like a veteran, absolutely, after being there for 9 seasons, but also still feeling very new to the game and very new to the evolution of women's para hockey, because there's a handful of people that have been there literally since day one and still there and pushing through, and it's really incredible to see the growth of the game and this program individually. We had the most women at tryouts in program history, and now we get to fight for spots going into the World Challenge and pushing each other, and it's actually been really cool to see the next generation come into the mix as well. I think now we have 4 or 5 girls anywhere between the ages of 14 and 16. So we got a young bunch coming in, fired up, ready to push us veterans, and us veterans trying to just be just that strong support both on and off the ice as well to inspire that next generation. So it's going to be a really, really fun season, and I'm excited to see what can come out of it.
One way to keep your youth alive is to play with a bunch of youth, and asked Jennifer Jones in the curling world how she joined the Mackenzie Zacharias group and said, listen, you're going to play my way, and that's how you're going to be. And all through that broadcast, Josh, they kept saying, man, you can see her, reliving her youth and being a part of that. And I said it sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it is true. When you hang around a bunch of young people with a ton of energy, you can't help but delve into or tap into what their energy is feeding off you.
Oh, absolutely. I just had a birthday over the weekend, turned 45, and I play with a bunch of college and slightly older guys, and I don't really feel a day over 30, but Father Time does occasionally tell me otherwise. But yeah, I'm waiting for the day when Claire tells us that somebody goes up to her and says, I've been watching you play hockey since I was 5 years old.
It's actually really funny that you said that. One of the girls that are in the top 20 right now, actually, we've been waiting for her to turn 14. That's how young she was when she started out. And I remember in Newmarket, there was one of the few Canadian women's national championship weekends.
I think I was there.
And and I gave her one of my pairs of sticks just to be like, hey, get rid of those wooden things. Like, here's some actually nice sticks, and ended up scoring 2 goals and an assist that game. So to now not only play with her side by side on my rec team, but now with the national team is pretty cool. It's funny you said that, because that picture pops up every year and I'm like, she finally turned 14 and here she is. So
yeah, it's interesting how those things can happen. If you want to get a hold of us on Twitter, here's how you can go ahead and do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone AMI broadcast booth. And we are set to get this ball game underway. The first pitch brought to you by Brock Richardson's Twitter account at NeutralZoneBR. First pitch, strike. And hey, gang, why not strike up a Twitter chat with Claire Buchanan for the Neutral Zone? Find her at Neutral Zone CB. And there's a swing and a chopper out to second base, right at Claire. She picks up the ball, throws it over to first base for a routine out. And fans, there is nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone. At Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. Now that's a winning combination. And this Oregon interlude is brought to you by AMI Audio on Twitter. Get in touch with the Neutral Zone. Type in at AMI Audio.
Joining us now is the host of the Whiskey and Cream podcast. He is also a journalist and producer and publisher. Of course, I'm talking about Ari Shapiro, and he joins us from Toronto. And I gotta be honest, Ari, when we have you on, that means we're closer and closer to Blue Jays baseball, and or talking about how they've been eliminated from the playoffs. Let me be fair, I prefer this conversation to begin with.
Me too, Brock. Me too. It's good to know that I'm usually either the bearer of hopeful news or the angel of baseball death telling you how it all went down. So it's great to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Well, hopefully you have better news than bad. Spring training is currently happening, so the season is almost upon us. And sometimes the spring training season is viewed as less important. But what do you look for in teams to gauge if they're ready to go for when the regular season drops?
Claire, that's a great question. That's an important question because spring training, for all intents and purposes, is basically a month to prepare for what will be a grueling 162-game season, which in itself is just, in this day and age, it seems so ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, 162 games to decide who plays in the postseason over the course of a long, long haul that encapsulates roughly almost 3 seasons. So spring training is designed to tell you what you've got. And what the Blue Jays have is, I don't know if I'll call it a novelty, but I don't remember the last time I felt this good about the baseball franchise heading into spring training. I mean, we're talking about even the 2015 year where they got all competitive in a month and a half, and 2016 when they also made the playoffs. But even then, there were still some questions in spring training and expectations that were more based on player names rather than what they actually had, if that makes any sense. And this group's very different to me. There is something going on in spring training in the first, 9 or 10 games that they've played which shows me that they're addressing important aspects of the team that were previously, I think, ignored for the most part. And what I'm talking about is veteran leadership influencing young guys, young kids who are ready to show what they've got at the major league level. And what spring training is supposed to do is show you who's serious about showing up for the season versus who needs more work, or in some cases, who just has jumped the shark and you've got to let them go. And the Blue Jays have this fascinating mix of redundancy with so many different positions where there are legitimate competitions between who the starters will be, as well as position players that are coming in with high expectation. I think there's an electricity there. There's this great energy, this thinking that this team, already acknowledged by American media as being the 6th or 7th best team in Major League Baseball, is coming in effectively as a legitimate World Series contender. And I think telling somebody that would not make them smirk or laugh if they knew the details of what's going on in spring training. It's quite exciting.
Now, the Blue Jays did start their offseason trading their star outfielder Teoscar Hernandez to the Mariners for Eric Swanson and pitching prospect Adam Macko. A lot of the fans that I saw were not very happy with that trade, given how likable Teoscar was. I'm wondering what you think of the move.
Josh, I think you've accurately explained or identified something that many Blue Jays fans, including myself, felt when they heard the news about the Teoscar Hernandez trade. It's funny, isn't it? Hernandez effectively reached a point where he could finally be seen as a true, reputable, through-and-through Major League Baseball player. And I've got like maybe 20 or 30 pretty nice semi-viral tweets to prove my disdain and scorn for the fact that for the longest time I felt he was not Major League material. Fans will remember he came up and there was a long learning curve for this fellow, but then a lot of players in the past have had long learning curves. Carlos Delgado wasn't an overnight sensation. Roy Halladay wasn't an overnight sensation. Sometimes you have to wait for the best talent that you're trying to cultivate. And with Hernandez, it looked like we'd finally reached that point as the fans and followers of the team to identify a player that looked like he was about to have a classic George Bell in his prime 30 to 40 home run season with 120 RBIs. But what management felt was that this was not the kind of player that they wanted on the roster, capable of giving you more than just flashy stats. And as anyone who followed Hernandez in the last couple of years knows especially, you're not talking about a very good defensive player. In fact, I would argue that Teoscar, as great as an offensive player as he is and all talented with his bat, in terms of his baseball fundamentals, there was a real problem there. So I think initially fans were angry that this fellow who'd matured and grown to be a regular starter on the team had now been shipped out. But what they need to remember is culturally, the organization had grown tired of the proverbial home run jackets, and nobody epitomized the home run jacket celebration more than a Teoscar Hernandez or a Lourdes Gurriel Jr. So even though initially fans, I think, were shocked because it didn't seem like that was the kind of player you needed to trade, in many respects, that was precisely the kind of player that you had to let go, one that you knew whose contract was going to be up very soon, and now is probably the best time you'd get value for somebody who's known for a flashy bat and pretty much weak leather.
So this trade happens, and then from there, the Blue Jays went on to add outfielder Kevin Kiermaier to the mix. What do you make of that addition to the team?
Adding Kiermaier, I think, was part of a goal that the organization had at the end of last year, which was to find better defensive players, preferably who could hit left-handed, and whose work ethic, and baseball fundamentals were something that, quite frankly, hasn't been seen around these parts in a very long time, maybe not since Scott Rowland, ironically enough, who just recently got into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Defensively, with Kiermaier, that's exactly what you get. You get a Scott Rowland caliber center fielder position player who is notorious and synonymous for his Gold Gloves. And, notwithstanding the Kevin Pillar era, which started well but ended up being rather one-dimensional because, like Kiermaier, he didn't have much of a bat, what Kevin Kiermaier has that Kevin Pillar never had was a sensibility and a fundamental behind how he plays the game that I think fans are going to be absolutely tickled pink when they see every single night. Whenever the Blue Jays would go into Tampa Bay or had to face the Rays, they would invariably get burned by Kiermaier in one facet or another. And while I didn't mind the stolen base or the scrappy hitting for a guy whose career average isn't that high, what really got me frustrated was seeing these gold caliber all-star plays that the Blue Jays, from an outfield perspective, were sorely lacking. And by signing a Kiermaier and then later acquiring Dalton Varsho along with George Springer, now you've got a rock-solid Gold Glove caliber outfielder. And I need you three to appreciate at this round table that we have here that that's such a rarity around these parts, to have not one, but two, and then three positions in the outfield that you can look at as a fan and feel confident that in a close game, regardless of who's on the mound, you've got the best players you need playing defense.
Yeah, and I think, let's be fair, is that, you have to have resources that will be able to handle injuries, because I think it's unfair to say, well, we're going to go through 162 games without an injury. That's just simply not the case, and it feels to me this time around like we have that depth in places we didn't have it before, Ari, which is something that I really appreciate with the organization, and it's something that we haven't seen in a long time.
That's how you win. That's how you win pennants, Brock, and that's how you win the World Series ultimately and find success in the playoffs, is by having key redundancy in key positions. And whether you're looking at the catching position, or whether you're looking at second base, or whether you're looking at who you can use as your designated hitter in strategic situations, the Blue Jays have a tremendous contingency for just about every case this year. Obviously, fans would like to maybe see a little bit more shoring up of the outfield, but there are so many different players who are vying for a spot on this team. Don't be surprised if you see a couple of guys make the team who will be constantly pushing the triumvirate of Kiermaier, Varsho, and Springer as far as they can go, and that's a great problem to have if you're a baseball fan.
Absolutely. We're joined by the host of the Whiskey and Cream podcast. He is also a journalist and publisher and producer. I'm talking about Ari Shapiro, and I'm alongside Claire Buchanan and Josh Watson. And of course, you're listening to the Neutral Zone and watching as well.
Now, the Blue Jays, after acquiring Kiermaier, then traded away catcher Gabriel Moreno and outfielder Lourdes Gurriel Jr. in exchange for what we understood was catcher Dalton Varsho. You touched on Varsho a little bit, but I know a lot of people were puzzled because we didn't know exactly who we were getting when Varsho arrived. I'm wondering, can you shed a little bit of light on him for us?
It's fascinating, Josh, to think that, much like the Hernandez trade, my initial reaction to seeing Gabriel Moreno packaged away in that deal to acquire Varsho was honestly, I wasn't impressed. I was worried that once again the organization may have given away too much by not giving a prospect to mature the way a prospect should. And if there's anything that most baseball pundits will tell you, that Gabriel Moreno is the real deal. However, as we know with prospect development, timing is everything. And with Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk, this was an opportunity for them to use a prospect who has yet to really establish himself, albeit showed a great deal of gumption last year and impressed a lot of people. This was a chance to acquire a player who is simply known as a gamer. The numbers may not seem like it right away. I know a lot of people were criticizing that he doesn't hit for a high average, but you're talking about a player who can play any outfield position, catch for you with Gold Glove caliber defense, and will most likely hit 30 home runs in the Sky Dome. So there was this opportunity, I think, for the organization to get a player that is controllable, that they can use to fully develop in an American League home run friendly park in exchange for a prospect who would have been third in the pecking order on what has been a tremendous resurgence by Danny Jansen, as well as Alejandro Kirk. So if it came down to taking anyone away from that equation, I think Moreno made a lot of sense because it gave the Blue Jays a player that fans will absolutely love for his approach towards the game. He plays hard. He hits from the left side. He knows how to hook the ball. He knows how to dive for hooked balls. He knows how to position himself to steal a key base. And he's, like I said, a gamer. He's somebody who understands the fundamentals of baseball from a very young age, and it shows in the way he plays the game. And that, I think, is ultimately why we heard so many plaudits from the American side. You know, south of the border, everyone was saying the Blue Jays are literally turning themselves into World Series contenders by going after players who will do anything to win a baseball game. And part of that doesn't include celebrating, a home run in the 6th inning when you're down by 4 with a jacket, or throwing sunflower seeds, or worrying whether or not you've somehow affected your haircut. Like, culturally, I don't want to be too critical of that, because I think it's important to have fun in baseball, but the organization is done having fun. Now they want to do both. They want to have fun, but from playing competitive baseball. And what Dalton Varsho does is he instantly makes your team more competitive by providing defensively a measure of runs saved that will more than make up for a low average. And let's be honest, Josh, we're talking about like the average player hitting in baseball, 230, 240. So if you've got a player who can start at that baseline in today's game and work with our leaders and coaches as the Blue Jays have brought in, because let's face it, you got Don Mattingly, you got Edwin Encarnacion, and you've got Victor Martinez. You've got hitting coaches who will, I think, work with Dalton so that he turns into a better hitter. But every other facet of his game is on a level that the Blue Jays never had a chance to see with either a Gurriel Jr. nor a Teoscar Hernandez. And in that regard, I think they made a great move, even if it may have involved giving up quite a bit with a prospect who could easily play 15 years in this league as a high-quality catcher.
Now, with all the moves, both in this offseason and last, what would be your synopsis on the performance of the Blue Jays management with regards to both the offseason and going into spring training?
It's almost a loaded question, Claire. I think you're trying to trick me a little bit here. You want me to say that I'm absolutely thrilled, but what is it about the team that maybe still needs to be addressed? Look, overall, I would give them a B+. I think they did just about everything they needed to do to become a better baseball club. Naturally, I'm concerned about injuries, as Brock said when he led off with the show. Well, look, injuries are just a fact of baseball life. You get 3 or 4 key injuries in this team, you're not going to win 85 games. On the other hand, you could potentially win 100 if most of your players stay healthy. And I think for the Blue Jays, the key is with their pitching. If they've got a resurgent Kikuchi and they have a resurgent Berrios and they have these players showing up that struggled last year and can give them quality starts, they will have a chance to win literally every game they're in. They brought a nucleus with them that still consists of what the Guerrero Jr. Bichette era is supposed to represent, but now they've surrounded them with the types of professional players like a Bassett or a Kiermaier or a Varsho, and by doing so, they've transformed them into a more intense and focused baseball club. And suddenly you've got this redundancy between a Whit Merrifield and an Espinal, or a Kirk and a Danny Jansen, and you realize that this tandem will be very functional and continue to push this team. And management did what management was supposed to do. Give them the right team composition where everybody can push each other, lead by example, and no nonsense in a year where they know they have a phenomenal window to lead the American League East if they all put their minds to it. So in the end, I give them top marks. Maybe not an A, just simply because I am concerned about some of the age involved with some of the players. These aren't spring chickens. I mean, Varsho's in his mid-20s, but the fact is a Bassett, a Kiermaier are not exactly what you call on the right side of 30. Nevertheless, I think it's their veteran experience and their ability to compete that will shine through and lead a lot of the Blue Jays' younger players. So overall, I think we're in for a truly exciting year, and I commend management. Can't believe I'm saying this, for the first time in what seems like ages, for really going above and beyond and trying to make baseball a great form of escapism for those of us who struggled through the pandemic and through the general day in and day out of living a challenging life in this world.
Now, it came out recently that the team has decided to retire their home run jacket, and I've heard you allude to it a little bit, but I assume you were not a fan of that whole celebratory mindset.
If by now, Josh, they had captured, say, a couple of rounds in the playoffs or maybe put themselves in the World Series, I wouldn't care less. I would say to myself, whatever they're doing is working. But it wasn't working. They were losing games they should have won last year defensively. And then when they were winning those games, they were too busy celebrating with those. Look, it was just ridiculous to start with. I'm not a big fan of grandstanding during a game. I think baseball can change really quickly. If you're up in the 7th, you could easily be, as we know from the last game of last year, down and out by the 9th. And that's why I think it's important to have humility. I think that's what Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins were really concerned about, that their incredibly talented juggernaut lineup was going around baseball beating up on opponents, but when push came to shove, they were screwing the pooch. And all they had to show for it were home run celebrations involving some kind of weird Dollarama jacket and what looked to be coated in sunflower seeds and bobby pins. And look, I'm sure it had some kind of existential meaning to a lot of the players, especially those who culturally looked at it as a chance to loosen up and have fun. But again, it's a professional sport. And if you're making $13, $15, $20 million a year, in my opinion, the last thing you should be doing is dancing around in a moth-eaten blazer trying to show people how happy you are to still be a kid. We get it. And I think the decision ultimately to retire it was done interestingly, wasn't it? It didn't start right away. It kind of, they let the spring training begin. They let the veterans sit down with their younger players like a Vlad or a Bo. And I'm sure they went and asked them, what do you think? Should we do away with this? Can we get on without this? And they probably unanimously said, yeah, let's just hit a lot of home runs. Let's celebrate them in the playoffs when it matters, because these fans haven't tasted what it means to be competitive in the playoffs for quite some time, and they deserve, I think, the best effort that isn't clouded with these types of, things I would have reserved for when I was in grade 10 in high school or something like that.
Well, speaking of things that might work or might not work, what are your thoughts on the pitch clock coming into the game?
With every passing day, and this is a really good question, because if you would have asked me, say, about a month ago, conceptually, I would have told you that it's not a great idea, that baseball is meant to be an organic game. And even if there are moments where there are time shifts or certain types of pitchers who are taking extra time, or a hitter like Nomar Garcia Parra, who used to have like a 48-second dance in between pitches or something like that, you didn't mind that if the action was of high quality. And baseball, of course, recognized that the games were getting too long. People's attention spans were getting infinitely shorter. And the best way to address it was to use what now I'm seeing is actually being very beneficial, especially to Blue Jays pitchers. All you have to do is look at, you say, Kukechi's first two starts in spring training and realize that the discipline of a 15 or 20 second clock is going to make a huge difference in all those moments where he thinks too much or finds himself grasping at straws to figure out what it is. I'm starting to like the fact that with PitchCom and the ability for pitchers and catchers to communicate directly and no longer have to waste time with signs, I think you're going to see that a lot of pitchers like a Chris Bassett or a Kevin Gausman will really benefit from the kind of steady pace of the pitch clock. There will be frustrating moments. There will be old habits that die hard if you're a pitcher, say, over the age of like 27, 28. But for young guys coming into the league, the focus is get in there and get ready to go to work. No histrionics, no adventures, no, scratching your jockstrap for 15 seconds or reaching behind your ear for that extra rosin that you hit in there or whatever the hell some of these pitchers do in order to get an edge. Now you've got to come out there and recognize that this is a game that needs to be played. Bring your best stuff, face the hitter, and have your battle within the battles that take place in baseball. And I think having a pitch clock will definitely improve that, because there will be intense situations where the game has to keep moving and pitchers won't be able to take a breath. They're going to have to get ready and know what they're going to do next. And I think for a pitcher, especially like a Jose Barrios, I mean, we'll watch him in the WBC with Puerto Rico, but I think you're going to see a pretty impressive dude who's just going to come show up and be ready to dish, be ready to throw as hard as he can. And I think that in that respect, the pitch clock will end up being a good thing, even though I still think that baseball should slow down with all these rule changes. But then again, I'm getting up in years, and it's easier for me to complain and criticize what is supposed to be good for the game. Let's see what happens. If it means the Blue Jays finish with 99 wins, I'm all in for the pitch clock.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And you know what? There's something about representing your country, as I've gotten to do, and it changes you as a person. And I hope that representing the country really helps someone like Jose Barrios, and lets him figure it out, and the pitch clock and all of that, because there's been some criticism of, the dollars that the Blue Jays gave him, and we didn't see what we expected to see out of him. And I think this is the year where he's gotta, pardon the expression, but put up or shut up. And I think anything that will help him do this is going to be worth it, because the Blue Jays banked on him, and now it's time to cash in on what they put out. And I think and hope we're going to see that.
Well said, Brock. That's really well said, by the way. And I just want to punctuate it that out of all the players who chose to stay and play in the WBC because, as you know, Vlad didn't, right? And neither did Kirk, which was a good decision for a catcher. I think it's brilliant, like you said, to let a pitcher have some international experience, especially a guy who was statistically the worst starter in the American League last year. So there's only one way to go, and that's up. And hopefully he'll do much better.
I absolutely agree. Ari, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. And if you want to get a hold of us regarding this interview or anything else we do on the program, here's how you can do it by voicemail.
If you want to leave a message for the Neutral Zone, call now. 1-866-509-4545. And don't forget to give us permission to use your message on the air. Let's get ready to leave a voicemail.
We are joined now by Peter Parsons, who is the chair of Blind Sports Nova Scotia. He is here today to chat about events and happenings within Nova Scotia. Peter, welcome to the program, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Brock. It's great to be with you guys.
Can we start by chatting a little bit about the history of Blind Sports Nova Scotia and what you folks have to offer?
Yeah, so Blind Sports Nova Scotia have been around for many years before I've been involved with the organization, since the 70s actually. And the main sport that we oversee is goalball. Goalball is a Paralympic sport. And unlike other blind sports, like say swimming or track and field, other sports that have like its sided counterpart, goalball is its own sport that was created back post World War II for blinded war veterans. It's been a Paralympic sport since 1976. And so Blind Sports Nova Scotia, we're 100% volunteer run. We have no paid staff. Our board consists of goalball players like myself and goalball parents. And so we have some great programs going within the country. We're one of the best goalball provinces, I could say, with a men's program, a recreation program, junior program. And we just started back actually on Sunday night. We started our women's program back up. So we have lots of goalball going on here in Nova Scotia. We also have tandem biking. We have a tandem bike club that's more recreational. And so it's a great recreational activity for many of our members in the warmer months, of course.
Let's travel back in time a little bit. And can you tell us a little bit about the Nova Scotia Open?
Yeah, sure. So the Nova Scotia Open is an annual goalball tournament that we run. And we started back in 2015. I always thought that, it would be great to have a goalball tournament before the new year. So we have it in November in the late fall, because the first goalball tournament traditionally would be the Montreal Open. It's been around for many years, and that's the last weekend in January. So I remember thinking, if we had a tournament before the holidays, I think that we could get some interest. So started back in 2015. It's been an annual tournament. We always have Ontario and Quebec come. We've had teams from the States come. This year in November, or I should say last year, in November, we had all the Canadian teams here, plus an American team. So we had a nice competitive, and it's a men's tournament that we do. And we sometimes will do exhibition games with our youth or junior players or women's players. So yeah, it's a men's tournament that we do annually. And yeah, we have lots of great sponsors and volunteers that help make it happen. And of course, a great organizing committee that put a lot of volunteer time into organizing the tournament.
Now, you folks recently had a fun tournament called the Gold Bowl Tournament in Halifax. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that. And I understand there's a story behind the name of the tournament?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, but the Gold Bowl is, a fun tournament that we do. We actually have it most months, usually at the end of each month. Since last year, we just had our we called it Gold Bowl 10. So we put a number at the end of each one. And it's a fun tournament. Mainly recreational players and junior players will play. And it's good because our players get an opportunity with our certified refs that we have here in Nova Scotia, which is actually good for them as well to ref some official games. And for our players, it's an opportunity to play in like a real tournament-like situation, not just scrimmaging at practice, but we break it down into teams. So I usually get our members to let me know. They reply to my email saying if they're available to play that week or not, that weekend coming, and split the teams up as equally as I can, along with our coach Linda, and we'll split up the teams equally and have a fun little like round robin tournament. And yeah, so it's been a great experience. I think it's really actually helped our players have more game opportunity, because goalball is not a sport like other sports, some other mainstream sports where you play in a league, for example, usually practice weekly and then go away for some tournaments. But so this gives more competitive opportunity. And yeah, the name of it, I remember when we were coming up with the idea, one of our members, we were texting about it, and she, with her dictating into her phone, said goal ball, which usually doesn't come out so well on a phone, the word goal ball, and it said gold bowl. And I remember replying, that's what we should name our fun tournament. You have the Super Bowl. So it was the Gold Bowl. And then another one of our members had made a little trophy. It's like a bowl that's gold, and it had Braille with the name of it. And so then whoever wins it, it's just for fun. Of course, we'll take pictures at the end as the winning team. We'll get to keep it till the next month. They bring it back to the gym, this Gold Bowl trophy. So it's been a lot of fun, and at the same time, it's been really good experience for all involved, including some volunteers, because we'll train them on doing the score clock, for example, or doing some of the different volunteer roles, scorekeeper, goal judges. So that way, when we have our Nova Scotia Open, we have our volunteers who have had an opportunity to volunteer at the Gold Bowl tournaments to get some extra training and to be trained volunteers for a more official tournament like the Nova Scotia Open, or if we're hosting junior nationals or senior nationals, for example.
That sounds like a really cool looking trophy. This weekend coming up, there's a Grand Slam tournament happening. Can you tell us a little bit about that tournament and who's involved?
Yeah, so it's the Surrey Grand Slam. So we're flying out to Vancouver, and the Vancouver Goalball Club is putting on the tournament, and they do a great job every year with it. And this is actually the first year back since the pandemic, as was our Nova Scotia Open actually back in November after having a couple of years off. So it's been great getting back into the tournaments in full swing. But the Grand Slam is probably the strongest tournament that we'll have here in Canada, and maybe I'd actually say in North America, because we have a team coming from Brazil, and we have 3 American teams along with 4 Canadian teams. And so there's some really strong competition. Brazil are the best in the world at goalball. They're defending Paralympic champs, defending world champs. And so it's a club team from Brazil. Not their national team, but they're going to be very strong, I expect, as well as a couple of strong American teams and our top Canadian teams. So there's 8 men's teams, 2 pools of 4. And yeah, it will be this weekend in Surrey, BC. And they're going to have a live stream. If anybody wanted to look up Vancouver Goalball Club, all their social media, they'll have links to that live stream of that tournament. So really looking forward to that one for our Nova Scotia men's team, as well as all of the Canadian teams. It's going to be a great, I think, experience, and a nice, really good, competitive, well-organized tournament.
That really sounds like an amazing time. For those that want to get involved with Blind Sports Nova Scotia, either on the side of playing a sport like goalball or volunteering with the organization, how can they go about that?
Yeah, for sure. Our website, blindsportsnovascotia.ca, they can go to. We also connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at blindsportsns. They can, and anybody in the Halifax area can come to one of our practices to check it out. We practice on Saturdays from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock at the George Dixon Center, 2502 Brunswick Street in Halifax. Anybody could just pop by if they would like. And we also have our men's and now women's practices, what we just started up, as I mentioned earlier, on Sundays. So we're always looking for volunteers, always looking for new players, especially since it's been probably like 7 or 8 years since we've had our recreation program going as well. So it's a great practice, the rec practice, for people who just want to try it out, play recreationally. Sometimes we've had people that will start at the rec practice and get more competitive as well. So we have lots of opportunities, and it's there's lots of competitive opportunities, but also a lot of social opportunities for someone who's blind or visually impaired as well, looking to connect with other blind and visually impaired people. Like I said earlier, our tandem bike club has been quite popular, getting together. We do some group rides. So yeah, lots of ways to connect. But you can find us, like I said, on the web. At Blind Sports NS is our social media handle.
Peter, I think something that caught my attention during the interview as I listened was you were talking about the officiating of goalball, and sometimes in parasports you can go along your brother's sport or your sister's sport, however you want to look at it, and sort of mimic officiating in that regard. Goalball is one of those parasports that stands alone. There's no necessarily able-bodied affiliate sport. Can you talk just briefly a little bit about the officiating and how you sort of teach new officials how to effectively officiate the sport of goalball?
Yeah, definitely. We at our Nova Scotia Open in the past, we've had some referee clinics at I think 2 out of our 6 tournaments that we've had in the past, and so people can sign up for one of these referee clinics, and it takes the whole weekend that we have a goalball tournament, and you kind of, in a way, you get thrown right into the fire to officiate the tournament along with more experienced officials as well. And so we have the CBSA, the Canadian Blind Sports Association. We have level 1 CBSA officials, and then we have the International Blind Sports Association, IBSA officials as well. And so yeah, and officials have the opportunity to work their way right on up to officiating at international level events, World Championships, Paralympics, and so on. We have some of the best officials in the world, actually, in Canada. And so we've had a few locally here in the Halifax area that have gotten involved in the last so many years. And a lot of times they might start as a volunteer at our practices, and after volunteering and getting more interested, and sometimes we'll say, well, there's an opportunity, you could become a goalball referee, and we have a referee clinic coming up at our tournament. We've had one person that went to Montreal, the Montreal Open, to get his level 1 IBSA certification. And so yeah, it's just a matter, and then we have some of our officials that will come to practice to fine-tune their skills or keep them sharp, or ref at our goal bowls that we're talking about, and that's always a good opportunity to keep those skills sharp as well. And then also travel to, like when we're in Montreal back at the end of January, we had one of our Nova Scotia officials there, and we're at the Ontario Parasport Games at the beginning of February. We had another one of our officials that was reffing there. So yeah, it's there's a lot of goalball rules, and there's a lot to it, but it's, I think, quite rewarding for some of those that have gotten involved with officiating goalball.
I genuinely believe that once you get hooked into parasports in general, it's pretty hard to get unhooked. The community has a way of holding their people and holding them well, and teaching them and grooming them in a good way. And I just think that that's really great and really also important. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. We greatly appreciate it, and we hope to have you back on or some of your athletes.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a lot of great athletes and a lot of up-and-coming young athletes as well. I'm sure they would be happy to join this program sometime in the future.
We would love to have them. That was Peter Parsons, who is the chair of Blind Sports Nova Scotia. And again, he was here talking about events and happenings within the organization. And like I said, we are going to have him back on and some of the athletes down the line. As we often do sometimes when we have two wonderful interviews, we have a titch of time left over. And with this titch of time, where did I get the word titch from, you ask? That would be curling, because they use the word titch every once in a while as they talk about the dial going over. So if you can visualize a dial, they'll say 1 plus a titch, which has now become the technical term of curling using the measurement. So I decided I'd throw in the word titch. 10 minutes is a little more than a titch, but if I keep talking about a titch, then we're going to run out of time. So let's move on from this.
You learn something new every day, man. Wow.
Yeah, totally. I want to go back to the Ari Shapiro conversation and really hone in on a couple of pieces with this conversation. For one, I think that fans of their sports teams, and I'm talking about it from a broad perspective. I'm not honing in on baseball specifically. I'm talking about this from a broad perspective, and the broad perspective is that fans fall in love with their team, and I'm totally fine with it. But then when it comes to letting go of players, that's when we have the problem. We see the uproar on social media. Oh, this is so-and-so, and this was a terrible move, and the list goes on and on with the conversation. For me, Dalton Varsho was that person. I kind of was like, who the heck is Dalton Varsho, and why do we need this guy? And then the thing that tipped the scales for me, Josh, was when I heard that he plays multiple positions, and I was like, oh, this is good. This is what we need. We need run prevention. This is good. So I bought into it, but I think fans sometimes take a little bit longer to do so, Josh.
I agree, and I think a lot of the time it's because the people that get sent out from an organization are the ones that we often fall in love with. Like, we loved Teoscar's big, bright smile and his laugh and just the way that he brought levity to the team. But we also had to recognize that he's probably at the peak of his career at the moment. And so he made for a very attractive trade chip for those two pitchers. It's tough as a fan. I do the same thing where I'll sit there and I'll say, they can't trade him. We need him. And then they do the trade. They get back some good pieces that I haven't necessarily heard of before. And you see them on the field, and then you fall in love with those guys. Like, I, for one, am ecstatic to have Kevin Kiermaier on our team so that we don't have to worry about dropping any cards out of people's pockets and having him pick them up. At least he's on our side this time. But that's a conversation we don't have time for. But yeah, it's really interesting as a fan to kind of just reflect on, oh yeah, they traded this guy for that guy, and we didn't think that he was going to be. We didn't think we could ever trade him, and we did, and we're fine. We're actually better than we were before. So,
yeah, Claire, I want to sort of take this for you in this direction. I think sometimes we think of players and we go, oh, who's this guy? And he could be no good because we don't know him by name. The people want the name, and they want the flashy, marquee that says, we've got this guy, aka George Springer, and everyone knows exactly who George Springer is. The first question they asked that guy was, were you part of the cheating scandal, and what did you have to do? But again, we don't have enough time for this. I just think it's a question of people want that name person. They want that person that they can say, I know this guy. And when you hear Dalton Varsho and everybody goes, huh? Like, And we get so stuck on the name and as opposed to what they might bring, because everyone gets so hung up on, we don't know him, so he must not be any good.
Yeah, I mean, that comes with, are you a sports fan or are you a Blue Jays fan? Are you looking to win championships, or are you just looking for a fun, flashy game to be watched? And like he alluded to up to this point, yeah, we've been having a lot of fun over the last few years and having a lot of flashy names come in and out. And but like other organizations in this city, it's time to bring in players that make an impact. And it's one of the oldest sayings in the books, defense wins championships. You're not going to win championships being flashy and not being focused. And I think that he said it very clearly. And I totally agree with getting rid of the likes of like the home run jacket is, yes, I think like any team, you have to try things to see if they do work and see how they motivate your team, or if they don't work. And this just something that kind of stayed surface level and really didn't translate throughout the entire look of the team. So we're on to trying new things and bringing different people in, and it's going to be an exciting season, I believe, because I totally agree that defense wins championships. And you like to see those teams that in the past have kind of eluded us and be able to go in there confident that you can put a stop to them, because we can hit as many home runs as we want, but if we can't stop the other team from doing the same thing, then what's the point? What are we doing?
Okay. Here is my concern about getting rid of the home run jacket. Do I think it was a good thing? Yes. Do I think adding Don Mattingly was a good thing? Yes. Here's my concern, though. My concern is that we have become too serious, which when we're winning, this is a good thing. When we get into a losing skid, and there's just no fun, and the fun has been sucked out of this team because we want to win championships, is it not going to be hard to get yourself up to play 162? It's all going to be good if they win and they do what they're supposed to, but is it going to be difficult? Josh, I'll let you weigh in first. I see Claire shaking her head at me, so I know where she goes on this, but Josh, I'll let you weigh in first.
Yeah, for me, I thought the home run jacket was cute. It was fun for a while, but after a while, it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, congratulations, you hit a home run in a 12-1 game. Like, are we Major League Baseball players here? Are we contending for a World Series, or are we just happy with the sort of the small victories, so to speak? And I'm all for having something and keeping some of the fun, but I even think in some of the moves you saw them make, I think maybe they're trying to get some more seriousness on the team, or some more veteran attitude maybe in the team. I'm all for having fun, but when you're committing errors in the field and when you're not changing your approach at the plate, something has to be done. I think we still have some really fun guys in the team. Bo, you're like, oh, for sure.
We still have the core that we're wanting to stick with. And that core is very young, has a lot to learn, but brings that fun to the team. And I'm hoping that it brings out a good balance of both. And yeah, like you said, Josh, they can still celebrate those in those ways, but maybe it doesn't happen during the game. Maybe that happens when they're back in the locker room, and then you get to point out individual successes throughout the team and have it as a more professional way without always trying to be flashy and just be a little more focused when it's game time.
Couldn't agree with you both more. We've had a great show, and that puts a wrap on today's show. I'd like to thank Josh Watson, Claire Buchanan. I'd also like to thank Jordan Steves, who has been our technical producer for today. Our regular technical producer is Mark Aflalo. Tune in next week because you just never know what happens when you enter the neutral zone. Be safe, be well, and we'll talk to you next week.